All right, how's it going, everybody? Looks like we actually have a guest here who I will let in now. All right, thank you for joining, everyone. We'll give it a couple more minutes until to just see if anyone else wants to join. I see we have Elizabeth here. Elizabeth, if you want, you're more than welcome to share your video or audio, but if not, totally up to you. But I appreciate you joining.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thank you so much.
And yeah, throughout this whole thing, if you ever have any questions or anything you want to specifically talk about, just let me know. I'm not sure how many live people we will have, but there were several people that actually sent in some questions that I'll talk about beforehand. Also, just give a general update on things that I've been up to this week. That's usually how I start these. We'll give it about like another 2 minutes just to see if anyone else joins. Well, I guess while we wait, I'll just talk a little bit about my company, Joke Zero, for uh, anyone who's new and has not been here before, because we have had the last few meetings have been for the Joke Zero Patreon members, but I decided to make this one open to the public, so really anybody can join. I posted the link on LinkedIn, so anyone on there could go on and join this and hopefully get something out of this. But all right, yeah, I guess I'll just get started. If I'm looking off to the side here, I'm just looking over some questions that people sent in advance. And again, Elizabeth, since you're the only one live here right now, you're more than welcome to just chime in whenever you'd like.
All right. Thanks.
And we'll see, maybe some people will join throughout, but we'll be on here until really for an hour.
Okay.
Okay, so I think this is a good question to start off with. So someone had asked, was there a particular movie, filmmaker, or experience that made you realize this is what I want to do? I think that's a good question. So I've talked about this a little bit before, but I think I knew from a young age I was always really interested in film and specifically comedy. And I was always like making short films and things like that. Always had a video camera. And there was one time in particular that I really can, I think, pinpoint where I actually was pretty sick and I was in the hospital. And it was like the middle of the night. And I remember I wasn't doing too good and I was watching Family Guy on TV. And I was really in a lot of pain and I was still laughing at that. And I thought it was so funny to the point where I had recently gotten surgery and the nurse came in and thought I was gonna like bust open the stitches that I had from laughing so much. And in that moment, I was really just thinking to myself, like, wow, like I'm really sick right now, but I'm still able to not think about that and still laugh. And that really was definitely something that I still think about all these years later. So that was a key moment. So that's a moment. And also Seth MacFarlane, who made Family Guy. I don't necessarily watch Family Guy all the time anymore. I liked it a lot when I was younger, but I'm a big fan of Seth MacFarlane and everything he does. He did the Ted movies are some of my favorites, and the Ted show is hilarious if anyone hasn't seen that. He also did the Orville, which I think is hilarious also. I'm not even really into the whole like Star Trek sci-fi kind of thing, but I would highly recommend the Orville if you are, or even if you're not, because it's a really good show. Okay, another question here. How has your definition of what it means to be a filmmaker changed since you started? So it definitely has changed significantly because typically a filmmaker is a writer director. So I have done that before. I wrote and directed the movie Plan B that came out in 2024. And I've talked about it a bunch on here, but it's on Amazon Prime for anyone who hasn't seen it. And if you don't have Prime, it's also on Tubi for free. So that's typically what a filmmaker has been historically. And now, in this new day and age where filmmaking is so different, I think that a filmmaker is almost expected to be a marketer as well, really promote your film, to podcast interviews and all these different things. And that was always the case before, but it was more so like you would go on Jimmy Kimmel or a late night show or maybe do some interviews on TV, where now you really have to grind and it's almost like a full-time job for months. And you hear some filmmakers even talking about it for up to a year, going to film festival screenings and really just promoting your film and also your brand. Look at what I'm doing right now. Like I definitely never anticipated myself talking on a Patreon account to people, but here I am. So that's kind of part of being a filmmaker as well. I think you're really just you got to be willing to do everything because you can make a really great movie, but people might not see it. So it's super important to be able to meet people, connect with people, and try to get people to watch your film because I've met so many filmmakers who have made films that are pretty good, and then they got distribution and the film got released on video on demand, and just most most people never heard of the movie. They don't really get that many views on it, and it's because of that, because there's so much content out there now that you really just have a very likely chance of getting your project lost in the shuffle. So you really got to do whatever you can to try to stand out. Like for me, I'm on Patreon right now, just trying to really one, trying to promote what I'm doing and also trying to really trying to give advice to others as well, because I've learned so much throughout this, and hopefully some of the things that I talk about can help other people in their projects. Let's see, I'm going to scroll through a little bit here. Because I have taken some questions in other Zooms, and I want to try to find some that I haven't really touched on yet. So we got a couple questions specifically related to distribution, and I haven't talked a ton about that, so I'm going to definitely talk about that now. So for those of you who don't know, I am a filmmaker by trade, but I've gotten into distribution within the last year. I had a film Plan B, and the distributor was Quiver, who I think ultimately did a pretty good job with it. Quiver's done some great movies. But I ended up doing a lot of the marketing, kind of like what I was just talking about. Marketing, setting up interviews with cast, critic reviews, and all of that good stuff. So we also had nine theaters played that film, and I was the one to set all of it up. So I felt like I could do pretty well if I got into distribution. And I also wanted to be able to work on a lot of different projects opposed to spending multiple years making one more movie. So that's really why I got into distribution. And I'm fully focused on that now. I still do want to be writing and directing. And I do very much plan to do that still. I'm still working on some scripts. I actually was working on a script this week, but my main priority now is distribution. And the next film that I'm working on a string, is hitting theaters in less than a month, September 11th. So if you're in New York, go see it. Tickets are available for a few of the screenings. I have Q&As after. That was just kind of a ramble there, but I'm going to now actually answer some of these questions. What do you think filmmakers misunderstand most about distributors? So it's a really good question. And I think that it's changing a little bit, but it kind of ties into what I've been talking about over the last 5 or 10 minutes. But a lot of people make a film and they just assume that the distributor that I'm sorry, they assume that the distributor is going to do everything for them. They just hand over the movie and then that's it. The distributor releases it, markets it, does everything, and they can only do so much. A lot of these big distributors, think of like A24, Neon, Focus. Those are some of these bigger like independent distributors. But then there's also the big companies like Universal and Sony. Like they're huge companies. Those are companies that are marketing their films and really putting a lot of marketing dollars behind it. But some of the mid-tier ones, like Quiver, for example, nothing against Quiver. I think they're a great company and I'm happy I work with them on Plan B. But these mid-tier distributors, they're just not equipped to spend like $40 million to market a film. And sometimes that's what it takes for the general public to really learn about a film. And I think that's just a big misconception that people think your films, you get distribution, it means that a lot of people are going to see your film. Like there really is a lot that needs to go into it. A lot of films go unseen. There's so many films that I hear about on a daily basis that have famous actors in it and have good reviews, and for some reason I've just never heard of it. And that's as someone who works in the industry. and tries to watch a lot of movies. So again, nothing against distributors, but I think that you should go into it with realistic expectations. If you're a filmmaker and you're thinking of working with a distributor, look up some of the other films that they've done and see how those films were perceived. Did those films get a ton of money at the box office? Did those films make it onto some of the better streaming platforms? And that's a good idea of how you could see how your film may perform. I remember when I was looking for distribution for Plan B, I had a few different offers on the table. One of them was from Quiver. I don't think I've ever said this publicly, but we had a couple different ones. Like one was from this company called ITN Distribution. We had Freestyle Digital Media. I remember that was one that was interested. VMI was another one that I remember. There was also a bunch of other just conversations. I forget if they actually made formal offers, but this company ITN, they made a very good offer money-wise. It was way more money than anyone else was offering. And I did some research on ITN. The filmmakers who work with them had really good things to say about them. The sales agent that I was working with, Premier Entertainment Group, they were working with ITN a lot. So everything that I was hearing was very good, except my one concern was that they really didn't do a ton of comedy films. And I didn't really want Plan B to be released by a company who does a lot of horror. So I ended up not going with ITN for that reason. I went with Quiver because I felt like Quiver was a better home for it. They had some good comedy films. They also had a lot of films in their library that had some recognizable actors. They had films that I had seen before. And they also had a lot of films that were on premium streaming platforms, which is really important. They were able to get Plan B up on Amazon Prime, which is great. But they have a lot of films I remember at the time were on Paramount Plus and things like that. Um, I got totally sidetracked again. I tend to do that sometimes. But I kind of lost my train of thought a little bit. But I think what I was getting at is that look up those films that those companies have released, and that can give you a good idea of where your film may wind up in the kind of in the zeitgeist of films out there. So again, I went on a little bit of a tangent there, but I'm doing my best here. I'm usually behind the camera for a reason. This is another really good question. So, how has the independent film distribution landscape changed since you started making films? So, I'm gonna say I'm gonna count me start my beginning making film in 2016. So, I graduated college in 2016 and I started working at a company called Palm Star, which is a production company and finance company too. They would produce and finance movies. And over the last 10 years, which is crazy to think I've now been working in the industry for 10 years, it's totally different. So back then, I remember one of the first films, I had no involvement with this, but the company Palm Star I was at made this movie called True Memoirs of an International Assassin. And it was a $40 million budget. Kevin James starred in it, like action comedy movie that was a Netflix original. And this was one of Netflix's first ever Netflix originals. And I remember at the company, like everyone kind of thought it was a joke. They had a big premiere for it, and nobody from our company went. And the higher ups were kind of laughing at it, like, who would want to go to a Netflix premiere? And now that's totally different. Like, I would be very excited to go to a Netflix premiere now. So, in the past 10 years, Netflix went from kind of a joke to being one of especially for comedy, I think, as a comedy filmmaker, I think Netflix probably is where you would want to be. It gets a ton of eyeballs. Like I think if Plan B were to go on Netflix, I feel like a lot of people would watch it. So that's one way it changed. Also, just streaming in general, there wasn't that much streaming back then. So the films that Palm Star made, they were pretty much all movies that went out in theaters, and that's really how they did it. It was like you made a film and then it went out in the theaters. Take like Hereditary, for example. That's one of the probably not probably, it's by far the biggest film that I've worked on, most successful film. That film was an independent film and it went to a film festival and it got picked up by A24 and then it got released in theaters. And that was typically what an independent film would do back then. Now you could self-distribute your film. There is also that same method of being able just to go to a film festival and sell your film, but it's so much harder to actually sell your film at a festival. And now I'm on the other side of it, where I'm actually attending some festivals and looking to acquire films there as a distributor. So I think the barrier to entry is also way different. Myself, just being a filmmaker who had never distributed a movie before. It wasn't, it was a decent amount of, not a decent, it was a lot of work for me to do it, but I feel like 10 years ago, I never would have been able to do that and actually acquire a film. The other thing is that you used to, historically, you could make a film, an independent film, and if you made it for a reasonable, if you, sorry, if you made it for a reasonable budget and it was a good movie, like high quality film, you would most likely sell it up front for more money than you made it for. I remember talking about or thinking of Napoleon Dynamite because I made a film with John Heater, who's in Napoleon Dynamite. That film, I believe, was made for $400,000 and then it sold to Fox Searchlight and it made 40 million at the box office. And that was like a kind of a one in a thousand kind of scenario, but things like that used to happen way more. Now it has happened a couple times recently with horror films like Obsession, for example, but it really does not happen that much anymore. There's so many films that get into Sundance and premiere at Sundance, and they either don't find distribution or they get an offer that doesn't give them any money up front. It's just a distribution offer where the distributor is going to put it out, and if the film does well, then the filmmakers can make money over time. But even over the last 5 years or so, so when I first started trying to raise money for Plan B, it was 2021. And the film didn't come out till 2024. We sold it in 2023. But through that process, 2021, the industry was booming. Like COVID really, I think, set up streamers, and all the streamers seemed to have a lot of money and they were buying a lot of stuff. And that was when I started trying to raise money for Plan B. And I feel like if Plan B would have been made 2 years earlier than it was, that it would have sold for honestly like 10 times the amount that it did, maybe even more than that. And there were so many filmmakers like myself who saw this big streaming boom and decided, hey, I could go out and make a movie. And they did it. And then we all made movies. And then there were way too many movies. And there just wasn't enough people to watch the movies. Like there's so many different forms of content now. People are watching YouTube, listening to podcasts. Not that many people are actually watching films. So that definitely is a big difference. And one other thing I'll talk about is DVDs. When I first joined the industry, all of the films we did have DVDs. I have the films that Palm Star made. I have the DVDs still. I have the Hereditary Blu-ray. I have I think Glass. I had nothing to do with that movie with Glass, but the company Palm Star I was at did something. Honestly, Palm Star also did almost nothing with Glass. They were involved with Split and then were kind of involved with Glass also just by association, but I have a DVD of Glass. And now there's really not that many DVDs anymore. Plan B, for example, did not get any DVDs. I'm thinking of doing some DVDs for On a String and some of Joke Zero's other films. But again, it's not like it would be DVDs that you go into Walmart or Best Buy or some of these stores and buy. These might be DVDs that we would just sell on our website and maybe at special events and things like that. But that's a big market. Well, was a big market that no longer exists anymore. So again, there's so many different things that have changed. Another barrier to entry too is that you can now self-distribute your film, and I don't. It's not even self-distributing, but there's some companies out there like Bitmax, for example. I've never worked with them, but they're an aggregator, and it's not that difficult for someone just to make a film for next to no money and then get distribution from an aggregator like Bitmax. Again, it's not like you can automatically do it. Like the film does need to pass some kind of quality control. I don't know what the quality control is because I've never worked with them, but I think that it's a lot easier now than it was back then to actually get your film out there. Okay, let me see some of these other questions that we got. Take a drink of water. Okay, this is another great question. And I'm definitely interested in talking a lot about distribution because, again, I have not talked that much about it in the four four of these that I've done, and that's pretty much what 90% of my day-to-day is focused on. Okay, so is theatrical distribution still an important part of an independent filmmaker strategy, or has its value changed? So this kind of ties in a little bit to what I was just saying, but to me, theatrical is still very important. To most distributors, I do not think it is. Plan B, for example, was not going to get a theatrical release. Quiver told me that they were going to just release it on streaming. And when I asked them about theatrical, they said, like, they laid it out for me. They said, this is what it's going to cost for us to do theatrical. And it wasn't even a lot. It might have been like something like 5 theaters. It was less, like anywhere from 2 to 10 theaters. I forget exactly what it was. But they're like, this is what it's going to cost us. And this is what we think it's going to make. And it was going to lose a lot of money. And we already had so much to recoup at that point. So I said, yeah, I trust you guys. I wouldn't want to do this if it's going to lose us thousands of dollars. So I ended up telling them or asking them if I can get some theaters to play the movie, could like would you allow it? And they said sure. So for Plan B, there's 9 theaters that played it, and I didn't make a penny, but I didn't lose money like Quiver said that we would have if we went with that traditional way. I really just called up theaters and told them if they played the movie, they could keep all the money. And that's not something I wouldn't do that now as an actual distributor. But if you're a filmmaker, I think that having a theater play your movie and having them keep all the money is better than you paying a theater to play the movie and have the movie making less money than that. So I would totally recommend it if you're just a small independent filmmaker. For right now, though, I'm very focused on theatrical for all of Joke Zero's films. I've had some filmmaker friends I know have gotten their movie in like 300 theaters or 500 theaters at AMC's or Regal's. That I wouldn't necessarily recommend. That's not something I'm going to be doing at Joke Zero. Because to be honest, not that many people are going to be able to go see your movie if it's not properly marketed. And most independent filmmakers do not have the resources or the money to market their film to all of those different cities and theaters. However, if you do maybe 10 theaters and you really try to market those specific cities, it's a much different scenario. So for On a String, we're opening in New York City, and the filmmaker and main lead actress of the film, Isabel Hagen, she's got a decent sized following on social media. She's a professional comedian and she's based in New York. It's a very New York centric movie that takes place there. So I felt like it was really important for her for the film to play in theaters in New York. So I agreed to do that before even becoming the distributor. That was part of the reason why she wanted to go with me at first. And I felt like we could do okay in New York City specifically. But I still wanted to push other cities because why not? And we now have, which I haven't really said publicly because I'm still working on this, but we have 10 theaters now that will be playing On a String. A couple different ones in New York. The Quad Cinema is where it's opening up, so it's exclusively at the Quad Cinema for one week. 3 showings a day from September 11th to September 17th. And then on the 18th, it's going to more cities. Some of the other cities that we haven't formally announced yet, it's going to be in Cincinnati. There's a Los Angeles. Los Angeles will be playing the film. Um, there's a couple other like miscellaneous cities. Cape Cod. There's a theater in Cape Cod that will be playing the film. And we're going to be announcing this more formally in the coming weeks because it's all still a bit of a moving target. But to me, that is more efficient than trying to get your film in 300 Regals when nobody's actually going to go to see it. I'm really focused on getting it into smaller theaters that have loyal fan bases. There's a lot of people that just love going to the movies, and they might live by an art house theater, and they're going to go to that theater and see most of the movies that play there. And you can also, when you're a smaller film and smaller operation, you can really focus on focus on getting people to go to these. So for example, for the Cape Cod that I mentioned, so the film's going to be playing in Cape Cod for a week, and Isabel Hagen's actually going to go. So she's going to Cape Cod, and she's going to go to one of the showings, like the opening night, and she's going to do a Q&A after. And this is a big theater. It's like 315 seats, I believe. And the theater owner said they have a loyal customer base, and with us doing some marketing as well, um, I think we have a decent chance to actually make some money at the box office there because of the way we're handling it. We're not just throwing it up at some random Regal in Cape Cod. We're putting it in a theater where hopefully a lot of people will go to see this film. Um, again, nothing against Regal or AMC. Like I go to AMC if I go to the movies, but I'm not necessarily going and seeing a lot of these independent films that are playing at the art house theater just because there's not really any art house theater that's like super close to me. I'd have to drive like at least a half hour probably to get to any theater like that. So I just go to AMC, which is like less than 10 minutes from where I live. But again, I don't think On a String would do very well if it were to play in 300 Regals. If it were to play in a couple Regals, and for example, in Los Angeles, it is actually playing in AMC. But it's not going to be playing in a ton of AMC. It's just going to be playing in one AMC in Los Angeles. And I think with proper marketing, we can get people to go to that one specific theater because there's certainly a lot of people in LA that would want to see the movie, people that are fans of Isabel Hagen that can go and we can direct them. Hey, if you want to see the movie in LA, it's not playing at 10 different theaters in LA. You have to go see it at AMC The Grove in Los Angeles. So that's kind of how I'm handling at least this film. And I'm going to see how it does. I have no idea how it's going to do. I think it's going to do pretty well, but I haven't done it before. So this is the first time. Like for Plan B, I did see some of the box office numbers, but I didn't really have any skin in the game besides it being my film, but this I'm really putting a lot of effort into it. I'm personally the one that's making all of these deals with the theaters and working out the rev share deals and everything like that. I'm personally mailing them posters. The theater in New York, I was just there last week meeting with some of the people, so it is a grind, and a lot of independent filmmakers might not want to do that, but at this point I own a distribution company, so it's my duty to do that. I think a lot of the I'll say mid-tier distributors, I don't think are doing this. I think that's something that kind of makes Joke Zero stand out a little bit, besides only doing comedy films. There are some films that are some companies that are doing similar things because I have let me see actually what one company I'm gonna get a shout out to. Um, I'm just Googling a little bit to see I forget the name of this company. Or I Brainstorm Media. So I'm going to give them a shout out because it seems like they're actually doing some similar stuff. I don't know them at all, but they made this movie called The Floaters that I went to the Quad Cinema where On a String is playing, and there was a bunch of there was like a big cardboard cutout and everything, and their film The Floaters played at that same theater. And I looked up The Floaters, and it looks like they had a really nice little theatrical run that is still going on. I haven't gotten to see it yet, I've really just been so busy, I haven't been able to go to the movies, but there are some companies, apparently Brainstorm Media, that is doing it and trying to push theatrical. Um, some of the other reasons why I want to be pushing theatrical is because it's just extra money coming into the film, besides actually all the work I'm doing. And yeah, I'm ordering posters and things like that, and you do have to get a DCP and send it to all of these theaters. It's a lot of work. But for the amount of money that you could potentially make from ticket sales coming in, there's a lot of upside here. So I just want to get the most eyeballs on these films that we're doing. I want them to also generate the most money as possible, not only for my company, but for the filmmakers. Like these are people who spent years. I spent years making Plan B. I didn't spend years making On a String. I have been working on a String now for months. I think I came on board at the end of last year, if I remember correctly, but I've now spent a ton of time on it. And these filmmakers deserve to get their film seen, and they deserve to have someone who's going to be really pushing the film and trying to actually have it generate some money, opposed to just throwing it out there on demand and hoping for the best. So by playing it in theaters, it's getting more eyeballs on it, not only from potential audience that's going to go see it, but it makes it more legitimate. Like when we're reaching out to critics to get critics to review the film and they see that it's playing in theaters, that definitely helps. Or when there's different publications who might want to interview some of the cast. Having that theatrical element, besides potentially generating money for the movie, it also just really helps all these other windows. I think too for streaming deals, when it gets to the time to pitch the film to the different like SVOD platforms like Hulu, Peacock, Paramount Plus, all of those companies, they're going to look at the box office. If it's not in the box office and it didn't play in any theaters, then you have nothing to show them. But even if it makes like $50,000 or so, that might be pennies compared to some of these big films like The Odyssey. But for a small independent film, if it made 50,000 at the box office and was only playing in 10 theaters, that's pretty good, I think. So those are kind of my thoughts on independent films going to theaters. Again, not really a big fan of them going out in like 300 plus screens, but if you can really market towards the theaters that your film is playing in, then go for it. Like, why not? Another thing too is you don't want to get your trying to think of the best way to word this. So you want to know your markets as well. So for example, I live in New Jersey. There's a theater at the Jersey Shore where I kind of know the theater owner and he agreed to play the movie. I honestly don't think anyone's going to go there to see it. Jersey Shore, I can't imagine that many people from the Jersey Shore going to see this movie. The movie theaters, even when it plays like The Odyssey, there's not that many people that go to see it. It's not really an art house movie kind of town. So to me, I'm thinking like I don't even want them to play the film because I feel bad. I don't want him to take up theater space on my film when he could be playing a bigger movie that's going to make more money for the theater. So you want that as well. Um, because again, if I were to play the film there and it performs really badly, like that guy is probably never going to play another one of my movies. But if I don't play this film there and then I go back to him when I have a film that might perform better, then that's something that I would be interested in doing. Because again, these theater owners are taking a big risk. They don't have like 20 different screens in their theater. Some of the theaters actually only have, I think the Cape Cod theater actually only has one screen and they're going to be playing on a string. So a couple of the others, I know they only have like two screens. So these are theater owners that are playing on a string over other way bigger movies um, that they could be playing. So they're really taking a chance on Joke Zero and taking a chance on a string. And also it's good to, if you're an independent filmmaker, try to do what you can to make like more an event out of it. Like we are going to set up some Q&As at the Quad Cinema. We have other ones. I mentioned that Cape Cod one. There's a bunch of theaters too that I've at least offered. Well, I'll say Isabel Hagen has offered that she's going to do a virtual Q&A. Even if we can't do it live, we can set it up over Zoom or whatever it is, and they can record it and just play it afterwards. Like I had that happen for Plan B, and I did that for a few different theaters, and it seemed like people really enjoyed it. One example, Maumee, Ohio. I had never heard of that town before, but Plan B played at the theater there, Maumee Indoor Theater, and I did a Q&A after that was a virtual one, and I had seriously like at least a dozen people reach out to me after that are these random people from Maumee, Ohio that said they really enjoyed the film and appreciated what I said. So I was very happy about that. And Plan B did really well at that theater. And now that same theater is going to play on a string, which I'm excited about. So I definitely haven't said that publicly. The tickets for that are actually available on their website right now. So we'll be promoting that in the coming days. But that's a town that I think has a very loyal following for movies. One other thing as well, I mentioned Cincinnati's playing on a string. So there's a film festival in Cincinnati that's at the same theater, and I'm actually going. I'm going to go to the film festival, and they asked me to teach some kind of master class there that I'm going to be doing the week before On a String plays at the theater. And one, I'm going because I do enjoy doing stuff like that. They are obviously paying, they're not paying me, but they're they're covering my travel for me to go. And I think I'll enjoy going to a festival. I haven't been to a film festival for a little. I went to Tribeca actually like 2 months ago, but I haven't actually like stayed overnight at a festival for a while. So I think it will be fun. And I'm gonna tell a lot of people to go see On a String. I felt like if I went there and I told people that I have a film that's playing at their theater in 1 week, that a lot of those people will go. So that's really why I did it, because I wanted people to go see the film. And I felt like I could connect with the filmmakers and film fans at the festival who are in the audience that I'm targeting. I've been talking a lot, so I'm just taking some water, but that's pretty much the answer to that question. Um, this is kind of a second part to that same question. So, what makes a movie particularly well suited for a theatrical release? So, I'll do like two different answers for this question. One, I would say just like the general big big budget movie, obviously, The Odyssey. It's directed by Christopher Nolan. It stars Matt Damon and Zendaya and Tom Holland and all these movie stars. A movie like that, people are going to go see. Um, you see Christopher Nolan, pretty much all of his movies do really well at the box office. It's got like Matt Damon. I would assume most of his movies probably make a lot of money in the box office, and same with all these other big actors in the movie. So that's the one like big blockbusters. Like those obviously are going to do okay in the theaters. Horror films seem to do well in theaters too. People like to watch horror films in a group, and people like to be scared. For whatever reason, audience members seem to not care that much for famous actors being in horror films. For example, Obsession that did really well that I've talked about a few times on here, like that didn't have any famous actors in it. I would assume that most people did not know any of those actors. Well, at least they didn't know any of the main characters, at least by name. 99% of people probably didn't. I personally didn't. And that film did great. I saw it. I really enjoyed it. And I think that it did, not I think, I know that it did amazing at the box office. So for whatever reason, for horror, if you can make a movie that scares people, the audience is not really going to care if they recognize the people in it. For comedy, it's a little different. I feel like it used to be a lot more similar to horror with comedy, where like think of like The Hangover, for example. That movie did really well, and it had some recognizable people in it, but none of those actors were movie stars. Where now it's way, way harder to get anything made. I remember pretty recently I saw like this video clip from an interview with Seth Rogen, and he was talking about Superbad and how that would never get made now because the studio just bought the script and said they were making the script. And that doesn't happen now. I remember even seeing that back when I worked at Palmstar. Like we would make movies and it was like Hereditary, for example. Like we had the script for Hereditary and we were making the movie. It wasn't really dependent on who we were going to cast. It was like, hey, we got this movie, we're going to be making it, and then we ended up getting Toni Collette and Gabriel Byrne. And Gabriel Byrne actually originally that was Bill Camp was going to be that actor, but we the dates got pushed a little bit and the movie was still happening with or without Bill Camp. It wasn't like relying on Bill Camp doing the movie. And Bill Camp, great actor. Gabriel Byrne ended up doing an awesome job. And even the kids, like they auditioned. So the movie was happening regardless. And that happens way, way less nowadays. Like Superbad, like Michael Cera was definitely in stuff. Jonah Hill was in stuff, but you can really never, very rarely now would you just see a theatrical release movie that has actors that are not Matt Damon type people. And I'm not even talking about like an on a string theatrical release. It's only going to be in 10 theaters right now, and I am adding more, trying to add more, but you wouldn't see on a string be released in 3,000 theaters by a company like Sony or Universal. It just really does not happen anymore. So that is something that definitely changed, and I kind of went off the rails a little bit with that answer because the question was what makes a movie well suited for theatrical release. Um, but that's something that now having the actors are much more important, at least for the bigger distributors. And even for me, like I'm pushing on a string because I do believe in the film. It got good reviews. I think I feel strongly about it. But I also wanted that film specifically to be Joke Zero's first film. I was looking at a lot of different films and I've acquired a couple other films actually as well that we haven't announced yet. But On a String, I really wanted to be the first one because one, it played at a great festival. It won Best Screenplay at that festival at Tribeca. And I knew that was something that we were going to be able to market with, which is great. The critic reviews were good. It's 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. A lot of that was also from me, the reviews. Like obviously the film speaks for itself, but we had a festival run after Tribeca, and I was on board for the festival run, and I was inviting critics to all of the screenings. So we played at the Boulder International Film Festival, and I looked up critics in Boulder, and I personally invited all of them to go see the film. And I think two critics actually went, and that's something that I think most filmmakers don't do. I didn't think to do that for Plan B. We played it actually only one festival. Plan B only played at one festival, and I didn't invite a single critic. I didn't think to do it. But if you invite a critic and tell them you're going to pay for the ticket, there's a decent chance they're actually going to go. So Phoenix as well. On a String played at the Phoenix International Film Festival, and I invited every critic in Phoenix. And we got at least one critic from Phoenix one as well. Um, Vale, that Vale Comedy Fest, I invited someone and they went. And now, because of me taking the time, it's not easy. I had to look up so many different critics and figure out who was based where, and then find their contact info and orchestrate getting them to go. It was a good amount of work. I did all of it myself, but because I put in that extra work, the film now has enough reviews to qualify for Rotten Tomatoes, which is 10 reviews is what you need. And now it's 92%. It was 91, and we actually just got another review this week from, again, me reaching out to these critics as the distributor. Sorry, it's taking another little word break. It said word break for some reason. Trying to think if there's anything else that makes a movie particularly well suited. So this goes into something else I was saying. So for me, for On a String, it was the Tribeca element. The cast doesn't necessarily have movie stars, but Isabel Hagen is a comedian that has a decent sized following, and I felt like, well, I not, I felt like she told me herself that she was going to go to some screenings and do Q&As if I set them up. So that's another big element as well. Having someone who's willing to go and really promote the film. I don't want to say actors won't. Actors love promoting their film, but Isabel spent years making this movie and did so many different things for it. So someone like that is similar to me with Plan B. I spent years making that movie and I was willing to go to screenings and things, but people ultimately don't really care about the director as much. If you see On a String, you'd want to meet Isabel because she wrote, not only was the filmmaker, but also starred in the movie. If you watch Plan B, you'd much rather meet John Heder or Jamie Lee, who starred in that movie, than me as the director. And Jamie and John were great at promoting the movie, but they're not going to go to Cape Cod and go do a Q&A. And I wouldn't expect them to. That'd be crazy, but I would have. I remember when Plan B came out, I told all of those theaters that played Plan B that I would go if it was within the 3 hour drive. And at one point, I went to Columbia, Maryland, and I drove on like a weekday, and there was like seriously like less than 10 people there, but I still went and I did a Q&A after, and I view that as more quality over quantity. Same with this Zoom right now because for that I had a few people came up to me in Columbia, Maryland, and now they're people who maybe will watch On a String and watch future projects as well. So that element, um, and the other thing I personally look for is high concept. So I'll still go see a movie if it just sounds really, really funny. And not only funny, if it sounds good. I mainly watch comedy, so it is like funny to me, but like the premise for Plan B, if I saw that movie and I didn't have anything to do with it, I would watch it for sure. For On a String, it doesn't necessarily have the strongest premise. It's more of like a character-driven film, but again, it has the Tribeca element and it also has kind of has the cast element because Isabel's got a following and Jamie Lee also is in On a String. And Eric Bogosian is in it, and Dylan Baker, who've both been in a ton of stuff. So it has some recognizable cast as well, even if they're not on Matt Damon's level. I'll say again, this is kind of the opposite of it. This isn't another question, but say what makes it well suited. I can tell you also what makes it not well suited. That's like having a small film like On a String, for example, playing in 300 Regals. The movies would not do well. And I could just say I've never done it before, but I've tracked a lot of movies now, and there's a lot of, it might sound cool if I'm like, hey, it's playing in 300 theaters, like, but no one's gonna go see it. Not nobody, but those 300 theaters, most of them are gonna be close to empty. So if you're an independent film, again, just make sure you kind of know your role, know your audience. Don't try to shoot above your I don't want to say shoot above your pay grade, but like don't try to be the Odyssey. Just know what you are and try to do that as best as you can. And for me, I mentioned I saw that I didn't see the film, but The Floaters playing at the same theater as On a String. And that movie seemed to have a really nice run and not playing in 3,000 theaters. I think I saw it was playing in maybe 14 theaters, and it had like over 50,000 at the box office when I saw it. I would think that that's really good for those filmmakers. It's got a long run on a string. If it made 50,000 at the box office, I'd be pretty content with that. Okay, let's move on to another question. Okay, this is really important. And I talked about this a little bit as well, but how do you think filmmakers should evaluate a distribution offer beyond simply looking at the minimum guarantee? So, the minimum guarantee, if I haven't made this clear, it's the upfront money that you're going to get. So, it's essentially the distributor giving you a minimum guarantee, like we guarantee that you're going to get at least this amount. So, you used to be able to get way more money. Uh, as a filmmaker. It just does not happen nearly as much. A film like Obsession, it sold, I believe, for 14 million. So 14 million was probably the minimum guarantee. I'll use that as an example. So Obsession was made for 750,000. It got a $14 million MG, and that means that Focus gave those filmmakers and the producers $14 million. And that's what they get. And then most likely what happens is the distributor then has to recoup that 14 million. They also have to recoup their percentage of whatever that is. It's usually 30%. So they probably recoup 30% on top of that. They also have to recoup all their marketing. I would imagine for people are trying to act as if Obsession is this like self-released, self-marketed movie. It's not. Focus is a huge company that probably spent I honestly wouldn't be shocked if they spent 14 to 15 million on marketing. But regardless of what that number is, they have to recoup all of that as well. Some distributors also will recoup interest on top of the MG. There might be like a 7 to 10% interest rate. For Joke Zero, like if I'm giving you an MG, I'm not taking any interest on the MG. That's just not something I've done or plan to do, at least for now. But I've been involved with films where you see the statement and there's a 7 or 8 or 9 or 10% interest rate on that MG. And sometimes the percentage changes as well. A distributor might be willing to give you like a, say, an 80-20 split where you're getting 80% of the money and they're getting 20%. And if they give you an MG, they might say like, "Hey, we're giving you an MG, so it's going to be, um, we're not going to be as favorable on the split." Like instead of a 80-20 split, it might be a 70-30 split where they're taking an extra 10% because they're giving you some money. And again, those are things to think about, like in this offer. If you get a company that's offering no money, but maybe they are going to put more love into the film. I talked about how Plan B. I had a company, ITN, they honestly offered triple what Quiver offered. And I decided to go with Quiver because I believed in them and I'm still happy that I did. I like Quiver as a company and I hear horror stories about distributors where you just never hear from them again, give them your movie, don't hear anything. Quiver sends me the statements. Like this past statement, it's 2 years almost since the movie came out. The guy Larry is the guy at Quiver, and I think he did it honestly. It was like midnight, like right. I was like, wow, he's really on the ball. So shout out for that. I've heard bad stories. I thankfully have not worked with a distributor who just ghosts you. Anyone I've worked with, at least will send the statements. And at least in um my experience, Quiver's always sent the statements. Premier, who's a sales agent for Plan B, they send the statements. So shout out to both of those companies. I'm not going to say bad about anything for companies I've never worked with, but I've heard bad things about certain companies. I plan to always send out statements at Joke Zero. So those are things as well. Vet these companies. When I was almost going to work with Quiver, I reached out to, I think I said this, kind of started saying this at least earlier on this video, but um, I reached out to so many different filmmakers that had worked with Quiver before to the point where it honestly almost killed the deal because Quiver was like, apparently some of the people I reached out to, word got back to Quiver, and that same guy Larry called me and it's like, why are we hearing from our production partners that you called them and asked how we were to work with. And I was like, look, I've spent years making this movie. I just want to vet whoever I go with. And he wasn't thrilled, but it ended up all working out and they were ended up being okay with it. I might have went a little bit overboard and I reached out to like everybody I could find. I actually, honestly, I had somebody reach out to me yesterday and asked me how, I'm not going to say who, but a filmmaker reached out to me about someone that they had saw that I had worked with in the past and asked me how they were. And I gave my honest thoughts, and I'll always give my honest thoughts. If someone reaches out to me, I've had a bunch of filmmakers call me before. When I, again, with Plan B, I called so many filmmakers that work with Quiver, called filmmakers that work with Premiere. Those calls all mainly went well, or I wouldn't have wanted to work with those two companies. But there's other companies that I also called filmmakers that work with those companies about, and they didn't say the best things. So those are things to think about besides the money. I From experience, I've taken way less money to go with the company I believed in more. I feel like some of the films that that I'm now involved with at Joke Zero, people are believing in me, which is great because that's something that I'm gonna try to take a lot of pride in, and being someone who filmmakers can actually communicate with. You can call me, you can text me, you can email me, whatever, and I'm gonna actually respond pretty quickly. I remember I think within like 2 weeks, definitely within a month of me being involved with On a String, I told Isabel Hagen, I'm like, I've talked to you probably 10 times as much as I've personally talked to Quiver. And again, nothing against Quiver. That's kind of Quiver's better than most companies for sure. But that's just kind of the standard. Like Quiver's releasing 30 movies a year. Like they're not going to be able to answer every single text within an hour. Right now, On a String's the only film that I'm doing, so I really can put a lot of effort into that one. Um, and I have a couple other films that I've mentioned that, well, I haven't mentioned, but a couple other films I acquired that once those are the next up, they're going to be my top priority. Okay, we have like there's 4:52 here over on the East Coast, so I will answer a couple more questions. Um, I'm not going to be able to get through all of these, but there's yeah a couple more that I'll look at for sure. So, what questions should filmmakers be asking distributors before signing a deal? So, I've kind of touched on this and a lot of the other stuff I said, but when are you going to release it? I would say, how are you going to release it? What's your marketing plan going to be? Are you going to set up press junkets for the cast? Are you going to make a poster or a trailer? Most distributors are supposed to do that, but a lot of filmmakers now have to do that also. Um, you could ask them about different windows as well. So On a String is playing in theater September 11th, but there's also a bunch of other windows as well. Like there's the TVOD window, which is when the film is available to buy or rent on the different TVOD platforms like Apple and Amazon and Fandango. And I think Microsoft used to be one, and they don't really do it anymore. Google Play is another one that would be considered TVOD. Then SVOD would be if someone gives you money up front, like, hey, we'll license a movie for 100 grand and we'll now play it on our platform for a year or 2 years, whatever it might be. That would be like a Netflix, Hulu, Peacock type company. And then there's AVOD, which is Tubi, Pluto TV, some of the other free platforms that you can watch now that have honestly a lot of them have really good movies. Plan B is on several of them. So I would ask just what the plan is. Like how much are you going to be pushing that? Um, when do you plan to do it? I remember one thing that happened with Plan B that I wasn't that thrilled about is that the film came out and it was on TVOD, and then 6 weeks later it was available on AVOD. I thought that was way too soon. So at Joke Zero, I'm gonna not push films that quick. A lot of companies do. It's just like, hey, we want people to see it. More people are gonna see it if it's available on Tubi to watch for free. And I agree with that. That for sure, way more people did see Plan B, but 6 weeks after the film is on TVOD, I would still want to be pushing these films to SVOD platforms and try to get critics to review them. Like traditionally, you'd make a movie, release it, and then you have like a few weeks to promote it, and then that's it. Like the DVDs eventually come, and maybe you get a deal and it's on a TV network. But
Now you really have to be pushing these films for a long time. There again, so many good films that are out there that have come out years ago that just general the general public hasn't seen. Like no, honestly, like most people do not know what Plan B is. The only film that I've ever been involved with that a lot of people know is Hereditary. Like I feel like the general public, like maybe half of the people know Hereditary, which is a lot. Um, those are some questions to ask, but don't be afraid to just honestly ask them anything. Like when also like if you're getting an MG, ask details about that. Is there interest on it? Make sure you know what you're signing before you do. How long the deal is. Like, are you ever going to get the movie back? Is there an out in the deal? Like, if they don't live up to their word, are you able to get the movie back? Things like that. I would ask them as many questions as possible. Uh, I'll answer one more question on this list. Um, how important are festivals today in actually getting a film sold and seen? Honestly, not that important. They used to be way more important. If you got into Sundance 5 years ago, it meant you were probably selling your movie for $1 million. Now it does not mean that at all. I said this earlier today. A lot of films premiere at Sundance, and a lot of those films do not get distribution. A lot of those films get distribution with no MG. Um, so again, it happens. Obsession premiered at Toronto, and sold at Toronto, and there's on a string. It premiered at Tribeca, and I didn't technically buy it at Tribeca, but I knew it was there. I think if On a String premiered at Tribeca like in 2021, it probably would have sold for way more money than it unfortunately is worth now. Um, Back then, you pretty easily would sell the movie for more than it cost to make, and now it's just not. Again, it does not happen as much. People do still care. You can put the laurels in your trailer. The On a String trailer has the Tribeca Best Screenplay, which again, it really does help in that sense. But just because your film gets into Sundance or Toronto or Tribeca or South by Southwest or some of these other festivals, it doesn't mean that you're going to get $1 million distribution deal. It doesn't even mean you're going to get any distribution deal, actually. So I personally don't think it's important, but it's not nearly as important as it was as recently as 5 years ago, even 4 years ago. I think really 2022 is when it really things changed. So I think I'm gonna get ready to call this one because I've been talking for about an hour. Yeah, we only had one live caller today, Elizabeth. So Elizabeth, thank you for joining. Before we wrap this up, do you have any questions or anything that you want to ask since you're the lucky one that actually got to witness this live?
Hey, thank you so much for this hour. And I actually am with thinking about a much younger group of budding filmmakers, and just wondered, if you're in high school and you're interested in filmmaking, screenwriting, is there a path that you took or anything that you would suggest to someone who's really interested in that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So, when I was in high school, I at least knew that I wanted to pursue filmmaking. So, I had a video camera. It was nothing fancy, and now every iPhone has a camera on it. So, I'd say the iPhone now is way better than whatever camera that I spent all my money on at Best Buy when I was in high school. So, try to make content, and it doesn't need to be a professional movie or anything like that, but try to find like whatever it is that you like. For example, like love comedy, so I feel like I was always making comedy sketches and short films and things like that and posting them on YouTube when I was in high school. And now it's way more accessible. When I was doing that, really not many other filmmakers were. And some of my videos actually got a decent amount of views back then. And now I feel like if I did those videos, but it was like TikTok, who knows, maybe they could have taken off. So that's one thing I would say.
Hmm.
Also, I would say to try to, similar to what I was talking about with all of the theaters, like I'm not trying to get on a string in 3,000 screens because I don't think it will do well. So a good example for what I'm getting at here is when I was in college, I was a film major at first, and then I switched to a business major because I realized that the school I was at, St. Joe's, great school, but they don't have the best film program. and there was only like 10 kids or so in the program, or at least in my like 10 kids in my major. And I felt like most of them weren't really taking it as seriously as I was. So I switched to business, and I was still able to take all of the same film classes with a film minor, which is what I graduated with. But the one thing I wasn't able to do was do a thesis film. So all of the majors got to make a short thesis film, and they had access to all of the school's equipment and everything like that. But again, St. Joe's did not have any like actual good equipment. It's not like it was USC or NYU or anything like that. So the equipment I had, and honestly, an iPhone now is probably better than the stuff that those kids at St. Joe's had access to. Um, but I wanted to make something, and I didn't really have a lot of money. I didn't have resources. I didn't want to make a short film that I knew wasn't going to look good. So I was thinking, like, what do I have access to, and what can I make that would kind of fit within this budget? And my younger brother played Little League baseball, and my older brother was the coach. And I was thinking like, okay, well, this is maybe I could do something around this. So I decided I was going to make a web series about their team that would be in the style of The Office, with like a mockumentary comedy type show. And I had a camera and I went to every game and filmed them. And I edited, I literally did everything. And the show, it's called Small Ball. It's actually still on YouTube, like over 10 years later. Very happy with how it came out. Even now, if I were to go back and watch it, like again, I think for a college student, I was in college when I made that. I think it's really good for a college student, and you don't watch it and think it's like amateur because that's the way I shot it. Like you can watch an episode of The Office and the camera is a little bit shaky. That's how it's supposed to be. So I really made it a point to I didn't try to like shoot above my budget range. I was like, okay, I I don't really have any money, so I think the best thing I can make, like I came up with that idea for that show, knowing that I had no money. I'm like, what can I do with no money? I'm like, okay, I have access to this little league team, and I don't want to make it into a movie or anything because I don't really have a way to release it or even shoot it and make it look professional. But if I make it like a mockumentary, then it doesn't need to be professional. So that's one answer to the question. And the other would be to try to get experience, just reach out to people. For example, I have people reach out to me all the time, whether it be like on LinkedIn or social media or anything like that. And sometimes they just spam me with scripts. They're like, hey, read my script. And I don't respond to those emails. But if someone sends me a nice message and says like, "Hey, I really loved your film Plan B," or I get a lot of these actually about not a lot, but I get some more than anything else about Hereditary. They're like, "Hey, I saw you worked on Hereditary. It's one of my favorite horror movies. I'd love to be able to like pick your brain a little bit. Any chance we could talk on the phone or something like that?" And I'll say, "Sure." If it's a nice message, I'll always say yes 100% of the time. And someone like me, I'm pretty readily available, but you'd be surprised at how many other filmmakers are readily available if you look up your favorite movie and you look at the credits. And if you reach out to some of the people's names that you see, they're not all going to respond. If you're reaching out to a big movie star or a famous director, they probably won't. But producers usually are pretty nice, I've learned. Uh, if you reach out to 20, they're not all going to respond. But if you reach out to 20, maybe one will respond or two will respond. And again, don't ask them to like watch your film or read your script or anything like that, but just view it as like a learning experience and try to learn from them. When I was in college, I also did a lot of volunteering, at least to start, because I had no
Mhm.
experience.
Mhm.
So I was in college in Philadelphia, and I looked up website I used. It was the Greater Philadelphia Film Office website, film.org, which I believe is still a really good resource. I don't use it anymore, but at least at the time, that was like the best thing around. And I'd go on the job board and I'd look for films filming in the area, and I would reach out, and if they would pay me, great. But I did a lot of volunteering at first on just random movies, most of which never even got made or came out, but be like a Saturday and just volunteered as like a production assistant or something like that. And
Mhm.
once I was able to build up my resume, then I actually could apply for jobs in the area. And like I remember there's a couple times I got paid to be a production assistant on random independent films, but I was a production assistant on the NBC show The Voice, like the singing competition
Mhm.
show. And that was like maybe not only, but that was like the first legitimate production assistant job that I got that I was actually paid for. And I feel like if I didn't volunteer all these other times and be able to build up my resume as a production assistant, even though I wasn't being paid before, if you look at my resume, you wouldn't have known that I wasn't paid to do those things. Um, there's one other thing I was going to say as well. You don't even need to see a job listing. I remember there were some films that were, it was like a casting call. And I never really wanted to be an actor. I did some acting stuff back then just to get experience on set, which is something else you could do. But I would reach out to the casting call and say, I'm not an actor, but I am a college student. I'm interested in the film industry, and I wanted to see if I could volunteer on your set. Like, I don't need to get paid. I just want to go. I'll do literally anything you need. And there was a couple of movies that I actually worked on from doing that, where they didn't need a production assistant, but I actually just reached out for something else, asked them, and they were nice and let me go to set, and I learned a lot. But I just threw a lot of stuff out there, so hopefully some of that was relevant to what you asked.
Mhm. Thank you. Yes, it was. Thank you so much.
Cool. We're a little bit past 5, which is fine. Do you have any other questions or anything before we wrap up?
I don't think so.
Cool. Well, Elizabeth, I'm really glad that you joined. Definitely feel free to reach out in the future. Uh, if you're in the New York area, check out On a String. It's going to be playing at a bunch of other theaters as well around the country, which I've said a couple of them today. And we'll announce them. You could check out Jokes Zero on social media, on Instagram, Jokes Zero Comedy, and LinkedIn, and you could see all the latest updates for what's going on with the company and that movie.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I actually messaged you beforehand about possible volunteer experience. So
Cool. Well, I'm glad that I was out all day and I didn't check all of my emails, but if it came into my email, I will see it and I will respond.
super. Thanks so much.
Cool. Thanks for joining. Hope everyone enjoyed this that was watching this after the fact. This will be posted on Patreon. It'll be posted on it's free to everyone, so it'll be on YouTube and everywhere. So thanks and have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you.